concept of Three Hands came from our families just, always having parties, inviting our friends and family over and just having platters of food and everyone's laughing and having a good time, having drinks. That combined with everything that I've gone through in my life as far as growing up with being an artist and then being a musician, I think all those things just kind of came together, and I figured that if I had a space to contain that energy, that it would work. I opened this place because I want everyone to feel like they're welcome. It's like an ongoing house party that never stops. Soul food to me is anything that makes you feel good. It can be cheese and crackers, or it can be some fried chicken. I don't think soul food should just be considered like, mac and cheese or collard greens. Like, I think it goes beyond that. It's, whatever makes you feel good inside, whatever you can connect with. I think that's what soul food is to me. Growing up in Etobicoke, grew up in the suburbs. My dad's side of the family was English. My mom's side of the family was Black Canadian.
What was I like as a kid? I was definitely a brat. Outgoing, a little bit crazy, a little bit messy, definitely a tomboy. Most siblings, when you're younger, you kind of have bickering and whatever. We used to get in some pretty serious fights. I hit him with a Sega controller once. Like I swung it around and flung it at him.
When I was pregnant having Taryn, Torrie was 4, and I would always say to him, "This is your baby. This is for you. I'm having this baby for you."
Food was a huge part of my growing up. We had huge dinner parties with my dad's side of the family. The biggest impact, I think, for food was definitely like hanging out with my mom's side of the family and having block parties with like hundreds of people. Everyone's laughing and enjoying themselves.
And it was like potluck, so everyone just bring like buckets of food basically, and you have like jerk chicken, fried chicken, rice and peas.
A variety of different like salads, coleslaws, potato salad.
We kind of got the best of both worlds in that aspect, but it's also like we would go spend our days downtown and eat the food that Toronto had to offer. Chinese food, Caribbean food, Indian food.
And I remember quite often we'd get Cantonese chow mein and black bean sauce. And that was like probably one of my favorite dishes growing up. So yeah, black beans always there. Growing up, I was always into music. Playing Legos, my dad spinning his records, and getting to bands like The Doors and XTC and the Fabulous Poodles when I was like 3 or 4 years old. You know what I mean? It just really opened my eyes to music at a young age. Getting into my younger teens, I started picking up instruments and playing in bands and getting more involved in music. My stepdad came into our life. He was a professional drummer, which further pushed me into music. Eventually, I started a record label, helped bands in the city put out records and put on shows. Not only was I doing all the work myself for these bands, but I was still playing at the time. And when that didn't work, it kind of made me not want to even pick up an instrument for years.
I failed too, you know what I mean? So for me, to help him through it, I just, pulled up my own past experiences. It wasn't so much the failure, it was letting go of it.
Doing the record label, and although it was fun, it wasn't really what I wanted to do in the end game. And I took time and really thought about what I wanted to do with my life, and I just kept going back to cooking because it was something that I could do that not only that I loved, but I could make everyone around me happy with.
He didn't decide he was going to go to culinary school. He didn't decide he was going to go in the restaurant industry. He decided he was opening a restaurant. That was what he came to me for. He goes, I just want my own place, Mom. I just want to have my own place. And I said, if you're going to open a restaurant, then you need to go back to school.
Culinary school was interesting. It was basically classic French cuisine, which I find interesting, but at the same time, my flavor profile is kind of all over the place, and when I was going to school, I was very much trying to experiment with that, which I didn't think they liked too much.
Once he got out of culinary school, he was working at the time, I said to him, it's time to fast track your life.
While I started cooking in the industry, I was very lucky to work under very brilliant chefs that taught me a lot in a short amount of time. The last job I was working at Rude Boy under Liam Kelly.
My name is Liam Patrick Kelly, Esquire, and I met Torrie at the Rude Boy. Maybe food and liquor, a couple times drunk before that, but pretty much when I hired him, he had ideas of doing his own thing, and I was like, whatever I can do to help, and let's just make some good food and nerd out and that kind of stuff.
We were doing everything in-house, like beef tongue pastrami, smoked cheddar, making our own bacon.
Made our own pickles and kimchi and stuff, so he was stoked to doing things like that. And you can teach technique, you can teach skill, but you can't teach heart and passion for the industry. Knowing that you're gonna work 15 hours for no fucking money and you don't really give a shit because you just do it because that's what you want to do for the rest of your life.
I started developing my own kind of dishes and started doing kitchen parties on my house. I would get my roommates to invite their friends over, people that I didn't know, and would cook for them to see what they thought of my food. So I eventually started to go around to the bars that I would frequent and ask them if I could take over for a night and do my own cuisine.
For my birthday, he did a pop-up at this place called Food and Liquor. I invited all my friends to come, and we had the watermelon wasabi fried chicken and the guava jerk pork ribs, which are not on the menu, but are really, really good. And honestly, eating it, I was like, I actually can't believe my brother made this. I can't believe he made it.
Those nights were very successful and led me to want to do my own thing.
When we decided to do it, it was a little bit hectic. When we first decided, I'm like, oh, this is not gonna happen. It's just kind of like, whatever, you guys are kind of, not bluffing, but like, that's a nice idea, you know what I mean?
Torrie tried to get financing himself. Of course, he's young. Banks don't want to support restaurants, that's for sure. So the support system ended up being our family, and that's who we went to. They started a little crowdfund. They did a Indiegogo campaign and got a little bit of money that way, and then the rest, his father came to the table and said, okay, I'll do this.
Once we started looking for spots and like actually like taking in buildings and all of that, I was like, oh, like, this is really gonna happen. Like, we're really, really in this. You know, the real estate took us to a pristine place that we could have just walked in and opened the doors, you know, and he was like, I don't want this. I want a dive bar.
We got the keys and I basically walked in and just started taking everything out, and it wasn't until I had an empty room to kind of just sit there and look around and figure it out, that the idea for it really came to me. A lot of the stuff, like the ceiling, tables, the bar, like I built most of that stuff by hand.
Day by day, each day it would change and grow, and it grew into this. The first menu was more like, okay, we need to get open. What's the easiest way to make this happen? And it was dishes that we'd already created for other pop-ups. Torrie is a creator, so doing fries and hamburgers were not the thing for him.
What's your favorite thing on the menu?
Oh, what? Well, it was the burger. It's not on the menu. The burger. You know the burger. Yeah.
For sure.
The best goddamn burger in the city.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Sure. There's nothing else
Honestly, when I just changed the menu, there was like 50 people that came into the restaurant and they're like, we want a burger. And Taryn's like, we don't have it anymore. And they're like, well, we're leaving.
Now I'm leaving.
Fried chicken and watermelon. Do I even really want to touch that one? Yeah. So being a Black Canadian, a big stereotypical thing for Black people is fried chicken and watermelon. So I wanted to do a creative take on that to kind of put to rest that stereotype. It's a traditional like buttermilk fried chicken. I season it with some 5-spice, which also brings in an Asian element to the dish as well. The watermelon wasabi syrup, there's a bit of, I wouldn't say heat, it's more of a twang. Crushed cashews on top of that to give it a little more texture, and a little bit of fresh mint and watermelon just to kind of offset the heaviness of the fried chicken.
What is this? It's so good. And also a little bit random. Like, you're like, why does that make sense in a dish? And then you eat it and you're like, it makes sense to my mouth. This is great.
I came up with that when I was actually filling in for a buddy of mine at the Skyline on Queen Street. I was hungry, so I made a poutine, and at the time he was making some collards. So I slopped it on top, and it was amazing. So that's how I actually came up with that dish. But to go into it, my stepfather's from Memphis, and having him come into our lives and bringing his kind of Southern cuisine into the mix, he's the one that introduced me to collard greens in the first place.
People will eat that any time of day, any place, any weather, they're eating that.
I was pretty stoned when I came up with that one. This is like, everyone's doing Brussels sprouts, and I wanted to do something a little different, and I figured, you know, salt and vinegar. Who doesn't love salt and vinegar chips?
I am a sucker for salt and vinegar chips, Miss Vicky's. I could eat a whole big bag of those. So this is like a healthy option. Not really, but still, like, you just eat them like chips.
Black beans always had a big piece of my heart. I had ribs on the original menu. They're pork ribs, and I took them off the menu and got quite a backlash from people. So I brought the ribs back, but changed them to beef short ribs instead.
Those, the flavor on it and the way it kind of like melts in your mouth a bit, you're like, I don't know, everything's delicious.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say, but
the build out of the restaurant took about 8 months. There's a lot that we had to do as far as the plumbing had to be redone, all the electrical and whatnot. So the whole process was quite a while.
it's definitely like a whirlwind of things happening. Like, both of us still had like pretty much full-time jobs. Neither of us had ever opened or ran a business, so we were kind of like, well, let's just, you know, see what happens.
His father said, okay, come and get a check from me tomorrow, because he had money put away for him in a bank account.
When I started doing the pop-ups and, you know, really wanting to open up my own business, he was fully supportive of that and backed me financially.
You know, as we call peace off, he would give us so much and we'd do so much with that, and then he'd give us a little more and we'd do so much with that.
We were very close to being able to open. It was about 2 weeks out from opening the doors, And unfortunately, my father passed away.
The next morning, we got the phone call that he had had a brain aneurysm and he was in the hospital. I left work. Torrie took the kids to the hospital, and yeah, that was it.
That was my best friend, man. Just from the day I was born, we were best friends.
When I had dance recitals, he would make me like personalized trophies that were like to my little dancer. Like, it was, no one would win the dance recital, but like he would come there with flowers and a trophy for me. And like,
when I got into goalie, he started taking the shots on me and would, you know, show me, you know, pictures of Glenn Hall and Gump Worsley, and like my sister with the trophies, he would do the same thing for me, you know, and yeah.
It was hard to move forward when my children, you know, they lost their rock. They lost the person that, you know, kind of was their backbone, was the one that encouraged them to do what they wanted to do. It was kind of like your dream was pulled out from underneath you. You didn't know where to turn.
When it happened, it was so random and like sudden. So we were kind of like, well, what do we do now? Like, do we continue this?
He had co-signed for everything, so people started calling. Plugs are starting to pull, and we don't know if we're going to be able to open this place or not after investing close to $150,000.
We didn't know what to do. You know, everything got tied up in the banks. And yeah, we just had to figure it out, scrape pennies together.
So I ended up walking out of my job. And I came here with Torrie, and basically we negotiated our way into opening the doors. The day before the Dundas West Street Festival, we were determined we were opening for the festival. We were determined. There was nothing stopping us.
I literally put down the paintbrush the night before and started prepping for that day.
And about 1 o'clock in the morning, I said, that's it. We're going home. You're going to get some sleep. We're going to come back early. We're all going to pitch in and get this done first thing in the morning. Came back the next day, did the festival, we did food outside, we did food inside, we were packed all day, we were over capacity. We had staff that volunteered to work with us because we didn't know how we were going to pay anybody or what we were going to do at that point.
The Three Hands has a couple different meanings. My little brother, his name is Tremonti, and from Italian to English, it translates into Three Hands. Three Hands is also the three people involved in the aspect of the business. It's also a metaphor for the extra love that we put into what we do.
So was this always the plan, working like in restaurants? That kind of
Definitely not. There's not always a plan to be here. Initially, I really wanted to make dance my career. We had other employees here, like other bartenders and stuff, but they kind of left, and I was like, I need to take charge here and be way more involved and put my thing kind of not on the back burner, but like take more pride in what I'm doing here. Even though I don't do it as much anymore, it's the thing that keeps me sane. It's the thing that I escape to when stuff here gets a little too hectic for me, or life gets a little too hectic for me. I go there and it's like, that's the only thing I'm thinking about. Like, especially in dance, you can get lost by trying to impress other people and being someone you're not and doing things that are not necessarily in your character. And I found that working here has made me a lot stronger in my own personality because of the things I've had to deal with here. When I first started, I found that a lot of people didn't take me seriously because I'm young, I'm female. People are like, they think I'm just a server here, you know what I mean? So it's like they talk to me however they want to, and they'll be like, well, let me speak to your manager. I'm like, well, you're looking at the manager. Like, let me speak to the owner. It's like, well, you're looking at her, like, you know?
Working with my sister is, it's a struggle sometimes. But coming out of that situation with my dad, it was really hard for us to kind of stay focused and, you know, concentrate on the task at hand, but having each other there to, you know, catch each other when we're having a bad day kind of thing, it really helps with the whole, you know, such a monumental thing happening in your life.
I think we realized that, like, we are what each other has. Now I have a newfound appreciation and love for him, especially watching him work as hard as he does every day. Our relationship is like unbreakable. Like, there's nothing that could happen that's gonna make me hate him or disown him, you know what I mean?
The kids still have moments where, you know, their father, they think about him every day, every single day. But there are still moments where, you know, it's hard to keep moving on. You know, they've not had a chance to grieve. They've not had a chance to do any of that. But together as a family, we've worked hard through it all.
Working with my mom is interesting at times. Obviously, we have our qualms, but you know, she's there to help with whatever needs to be done. You know, my sister takes care of front of house. I'm taking care of back of house. My mom kind of holds it all together.
They're young. They're both very young, 30 and 26. So to know all there is to know about business and negotiations, it's, you know, it's not something that was inbred into them.
Like, it's family business, right? So you're gonna have your issues and you're gonna have problems with each other and things. I think it's why we're still here, because we're so adamant on not giving up. We've been through that. What else is gonna happen? You know what I mean? Nothing's gonna faze us after that.
My dad was a very talented artist. When everything got settled for the estate, I was able to get all his artwork back, and I spent, you know, 3-4 hours just going through all of his artwork, and yeah, just really incredible stuff. That wall was meant for that picture, and we just recently got it back. So, you know, since the time that we opened until a couple months ago, that wall was bare. You know, it was meant for that.
What do you think about what Torrie's doing over at 3 Hands?
Oh man, it's rad. Like, he's doing his own thing. He's making some really good food. The vibe at his place is awesome. He's always got live DJs and music, kind of doing the things that, bringing the two things, his passions together, right? Like food and music that the dude loves. Grew up playing in punk rock bands and playing music, and now he loves food, and he gets to do that every day in his own environment, and I think he's thriving really well, man.
It's weird. It's like some of the bands that I put on shows for, they're actually like DJing here now. Like they'll have DJ nights, you know, and they come in to eat, and like that community is still very much there, you know what I mean? Even though I'm not doing music anymore, those people still support me and I still support them. It's been an interesting road for me, just having food and cooking be such an integral part of my life, but never actually realizing it. I kind of chose, you know, this path, and it's all about hard work and, you know, loving what you're doing. And I can't really imagine myself doing anything else, you know. And really, what takes a toll on me is, you know, working a 16-hour day and then drinking afterwards. You know, that's pretty much it. So if there's anything, it would be slowing down on the booze.